Well, Donald Trump is just hours away from being sworn in as the 47th President of the United States, a crowning moment in a political comeback after losing the 2020 election to outgoing President Joe Biden. As Biden exits the stage after 50 years in public office, he hands the reins to a political nemesis likely to make sweeping changes to how America is governed. As part of our build-up, let's now speak to U.S. Correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who joins us now from New York. A very good afternoon to you, Sherwin. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, give us a sense of how this historic day will play out amid the freezing temperatures in the nation's capital that Trump moved the swearing-in ceremony indoors for the first time in 40 years.
No joke, the temperatures in Washington, D.C. This morning, our time, S&P, we're starting off at minus 11 degrees Celsius and only going up to a probable high of around -5. So you saw that decision late last week by the Trump transition team deciding to move this inauguration, the swearing-in ceremony that traditionally happens on the steps of Capitol Hill inside the Capitol Rotunda, where just weeks ago the casket of Jimmy Carter laid in state. And so this will be the first time that the ceremony will be held indoors in some 40 years. The last time was during Ronald Reagan's inauguration in 1985. I can tell you the Trump couple, the incoming first couple, that is Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, have just exited the St. John's Episcopal Church in Washington, D.C., where they had a ceremony this morning, a tradition for incoming presidents of the United States. They have now returned to the White House guest house called Blair House, just meters away from the White House, where they will eventually be welcomed by the outgoing presidential couple, President Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, for a ceremonial tea and an invitation that was, of course, not afforded to Biden when he beat Trump in the 2020 election, and Donald Trump, of course, not conceding. So we are back to traditions in the peaceful handover of power. We understand that Biden and Trump will then take a drive in the presidential limo to the Capitol for the swearing-in ceremony, a tradition that was also not implemented when Biden won 4 years ago. There will be a farewell to the former president and the vice president on Capitol Hill. They will then depart. The president will then begin signing executive orders. There's a congressional luncheon. The president will then review the troops. That will then begin a presidential parade down Pennsylvania Avenue. He will then return to the Oval Office later to continue signing various executive orders. There are various balls tonight where the first couple will make an appearance. So a really long day of events that are just about to get started, of course, with that ceremony at around noon our time, around 7 p.m. South African time.
And I understand that Trump is expected to sign a flurry of executive orders, just like you've alluded to, within hours of taking the oath of office, action that he will detail in his inaugural address. What does that agenda look like? Just take us through that.
Yeah, let me read you some excerpts that we've received from the transition team about what he will say in that inaugural address. The president, of course, addressing a rally, a celebratory rally at the Capital One Arena in D.C. for all his supporters that came to town. And he talks about Trump promising the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. I return to the presidency confident and optimistic that we are at the start of a thrilling new era of national success. A tide of change is sweeping the country. My message to Americans today is that it is time for us again to act with courage, vigor, and the vitality of history's greatest civilization. And Simpiwe, those are just some excerpts of what we expect the president to say, but he has alluded to signing almost 100 executive orders within hours of taking the oath of office. So at various locations during the celebrations today, we expect the president to then step aside and sign various executive orders, things we are told that will deal with some of the following. He's likely to declare a national emergency to unblock federal funding to deal with what is a central theme of his incoming administration, which is illegal immigration. He talks about mass deportations restarting again, an executive order to restart building the border wall, an executive order to launch large-scale deportations from the United States, to secure the southern border, expanding U.S. energy production, rescinding federal government policies policies around diversity, equity and inclusion, restoring travel bans, we are told, right? You'll remember that happening during his first term, and cutting government regulations across the board, particularly as it relates to things like the environment. This was Donald Trump speaking to his supporters at the Capital One Arena, giving us a sense of how this inaugural address might go. This is what he said. Watch.
We're going to do a lot of things. You're going to see something tomorrow. You're going to see executive orders that are going to make you extremely happy. Lots of them. Lots of them. We have to set our country on the proper course. By the time the sun sets tomorrow evening, the invasion of our borders will have come to a halt, and all the illegal border trespassers will in some form or another be on their way back home. The border security measures I will outline in my inaugural address tomorrow will be the most aggressive, sweeping effort to restore our borders, but we will quickly reestablish control of our sovereign territory and borders. We will expel every single illegal alien, gang member, and migrant criminal operating on American soil, and remove the savage gang Tren d'Iroquois from the United States. Every radical and foolish executive order of the Biden administration will be repealed within hours of when I take the oath of office. Oh, you're going to have a lot of fun watching television.
So the broad message and takeaway from that is that we expect sweeping change to be implemented by a stroke of a pen, by the incoming president's Sharpie that he is famous for using on the bills he signs or executive orders. But it can also then mean a lot of chaos in terms of the changes that, if you're signing 100 executive orders, that means sweeping changes across the board. And what that looks like in implementation is certainly something we as journalists will be keeping a very close eye on moving forward, Simpiwe.
And Sherwin, just speaking of sweeping changes, in one last act by President Biden before he leaves office, he extended preemptive pardons to quite a number of people, in a move likely to irritate his successor. What do we know about this?
Well, there's a great deal of fear based on the narrative that has emanated from Donald Trump himself and certainly the incoming Trump administration around retribution for perceived enemies, right? And so what President Biden has done here, he has given preemptive pardons to the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff who served under the administration, the first term of Donald Trump, General Mark Milley, has extended a preemptive pardon to Dr. Anthony Fauci, who was the sort of lead voice on the response to COVID-19 and subsequently becoming President Biden's chief medical advisor. He has also extended pardons to members of the bipartisan January 6th Congressional Committee that investigated the Trump supporters' attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. So the likes of former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, Senator Adam Schiff, who was part of that, and the president saying, "I believe in the rule of law and I am optimistic that the strength of our legal institutions will ultimately prevail over politics. But these are exceptional circumstances and I cannot in good conscience do nothing. Baseless and politically motivated investigations wreak havoc on the lives, safety and financial security of targeted individuals and families." So one of his last acts is to pardon perceived enemies of the incoming president. So a very curious and perhaps tense ride between Biden and Trump on the way to the Capitol from the White House. I wonder what that conversation is going to be like.
And I wonder, how the international community will perceive his presidency, because the United States, as you know, is a key actor in the in the international policy and the politics space. Thank you so much for your time, Sherwin. Well, that was a U.S. correspondent, Sherwin Bryce-Pease, speaking to us live from New York, just hours ahead of President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration.